Hey crafty friends, this is Jennifer and I'm back with another tutorial in which I want to show you how you can easily modify the Lawn Fawn Give It a Whirl mechanism to create a Give It Half a Whirl card. I also want to show you how you can integrate the mechanism directly into your card panel instead of using the base circle that is included in the die set. Alright, let's get started. Before we start making the card, I want to show you quickly how I made the circle stop up after half a turn instead of making a full turn like usual, and how I incorporated the mechanism directly into the card base without using one of the base circles. There's a plain and a scallop version. But since I felt like it's interfering with my design, I decided to go without it. I prepared all the necessary parts needed to build a traditional Give It a Whirl mechanism. The plain base circle is cut from blue cardstock for better contrast. And you need 2 of the moving circles. I die cut 1 out of white cardstock and 1 out of, unfortunately, very thin acetate, which turned out to be a little too flimsy for this purpose. I used acetate in hopes to make it easier to understand what is happening, but a stronger acetate would have been better. But well. So to build a mechanism, I start by attaching the handle to the top circle, in this case the one made of acetate. Next, I use the connector piece to connect the 2 circles together. And as you can see, I did this quickly rather than carefully. But if I was making a card, I would certainly do this more carefully to make sure everything adhered well and had no loose edges, because otherwise you could end up getting caught in the mechanism, what you can see here. But I have a little tip for you to prevent this from happening. I like to use a piece of Scotch tape or washi tape and place it over the edge of the connector piece on both sides. So this will A, secure it, and B, help it to slide through the slit more easily. Okay, made sure I covered all the edges, and as you can see, it doesn't get stuck anymore. Okay, let's start with the first alteration I made. Here I start just like usual by attaching the handle or tab to the top circle. But now we do not need the connector piece. Instead, we can attach the 2 circles directly to each other. And let's say we want the circle to be able to make 3/4 of a turn. This means I'll put adhesive on 1/4 of the back circle below the opening. I've penciled in the area to make it clearer. And now when I assemble everything, you can see that I can only turn the circle 3/4 of a turn. So it won't go any further. Likewise, I can limit the circle to half a turn for a rainbow, for example. And I can do that by simply applying adhesive to the bottom half of the back circle and then attach the 2 circles together. And now you can see I'm just able to turn it halfway. All right, let's move on to the second topic. Usually for the mechanism, we need to use one of the base circles, so either the plain or the scalloped one. Here I'm using the plain circle that I cut from blue cardstock. And normally we would assemble it and then adhere it to the card base using thin foam strips. However, for my card, I didn't want to use the circle and instead integrated the mechanism directly into the card base. And to do so, I die cut the base circle and used it as a guide to figure out where on the card I want my mechanism to be. And I also need to figure out what angle I want to have for the slit. So it can be horizontally, vertically, or any other angle depending on your design. So after I figure that out, I used the circle, the die cut, as a template to cut my slit into my card base. So I have the correct length. Of course, you can measure it and just use a ruler, but this was pretty easy to do. And since I had the circle on hand, I thought this is the easiest way. And now you can just feed the top circle into the slit and you have a working mechanism. To give the mechanism enough room to move, you have to use foam adhesive for this whole panel, of course, instead just for the circle. But if the base circle doesn't fit your design, this is an option how you can use this interactive die without it. Okay, let's put theory into practice and make the card I showed you at the beginning of the video. I'm starting with a brief overview of the materials that I've used. The stem sets might not be a huge surprise. We have a little sparkle, my rainbow and unicorn picnic. And for the dies, I've used Cole's ABCs, the reverse stitch scallop rectangle window, of course the Give It a Whirl die set. And to create the rainbow, I used these circle stackables. I don't remember the brand. Then I used the puffy cloud borders and the little clouds from the Peekaboo pop-up die set. For my shaker materials, I have these star confettis from my stash, and these are from Studio Katja and they're called iridescent snow crystals. These are the markers that I've used to color in my images, and I further used some gel pens from Sakura. For my fairy stresses, I used these metallic transfer foil sheets. And of course, I used some glitter. So this is gold glitter from Silhouette and the Prisma glitter from Lawn Fawn. And I used the creaky glue pen to apply it. Together with the foil sheets, I used this Tombow glue, and for everything else, my Lawn Fawn glue. So here's a look at the first card of the set that I made, and we're going to make the second one. I haven't attached the front panel to the card base yet, so I can remove the Give It a Whirl circle. So I could use it as a guide if needed. And I used the other half of my rainbow for my second card. Here you can see that it is a little smaller than my Give It a Whirl circle, but I show you how I dealt with that later. Let's start to build the moving circle. I cut the top circle from Lawn Fawn Acetate, which is much sturdier than the flimsy stuff that I used before. And I have a little tip for cutting acetate. Sometimes when you try to cut acetate, you just get an indentation, not a clean cut. But when you put a piece of copy paper underneath your acetate, it will help you to get a clean cut. So it's not serving as a shim. You can't put it on top. You have to put it below the acetate. And I cut the back circle from white cardstock. Now I'm going to adhere my rainbow to my acetate circle, and I'm figuring out where I need to align it. So if I have to put it on top or below the slit, of course it depends on your card design. For mine, I will have the slit on the left and the rainbow on the top. And while this is drying, let's move on to the card panel. I've already prepared one with the slit already cut into it, since I already knew where it needs to be. But for my first card, I determined the position as shown beforehand, which means that I used my base circle as a template to make sure my mechanism doesn't extend beyond the edge of the card. So I have enough room for my foam tape. And in terms of the angle, I put my card layers on top of each other as I want them to be in my final card, and placed my rainbow in its final position and move it back and forth so that I can determine the start and end point. And then I just have to temporarily fix my template circle in place and use an X-Acto knife to cut the slit. Next, I stamped my fairies onto my card panel, and I'm using my first card as a template to determine the position of my fairies. I originally did that using my rainbow, so to make sure they are hidden behind the rainbow. Next, I dressed the fairies in pretty shiny dresses using these metallic transfer foil sheets from scrapbook adhesives. These are the pastel colors, and I used Tombow Mono multi-liquid glue, which stays sticky after drying. Because you don't need heat or pressure for these foils, you just need a sticky surface. So this is super easy and therefore also suitable for such small and detailed areas. I guess you can't really see the glue because it's white on white, but I'm setting it aside to dry. And in the meantime, I'm working on my moving circle. Since I want the handle to be very sturdy, I cut it 3 times from cardstock. And as mentioned before, the rainbow is a little smaller than the circle, the moving circle. So I need to cut off a little bit of my handle. So the side that would be visible behind my acetate circle. So I'm cutting a piece off. I used my circle die as a guide to trace the curve in. And now it will fit behind my rainbow and is not showing from behind the acetate. So I'm attaching the 3 pieces together and cutting off the excess, and then I will adhere it at its correct position. And I'm using some Scotch tape over the edge of it because it's quite thick and I don't want it to get caught in the mechanism. So the same thing for the end of the rainbow. This might get caught, so I'm using a piece of Scotch tape. This will secure it and help me to get it through the slit. Perfect. Now my glue is dry. It's still sticky, but no longer wet. So I can apply the foil. So you just put it on the sticky surface, lightly rub it, and you can see it's just coming off, leaving the foil behind. Doing this again for my pink fairy dress. Slightly rubbing it with my finger, pulling it away, and my fairies are dressed. So there are some white spots where I probably haven't had enough glue. So I'm going back in with my glue, letting it dry, and then I will repeat the process. In the meantime, I'm going to glitter my cloud borders. And then I'm going back to my fairies. The glue has dried and I can apply the foil. Now the dresses are all pretty and shiny. Okay, I'm coloring in the rest of my fairies, so their hair, wings, and skin. And then I'm going to glitter their wings. And the third cloud border. And for the magic wand, I'm using gold glitter. And here's the result. Now we can assemble our give it a whirl mechanism. I put the acetate circle through the slit, and using my second layer as a guide, I'm moving it to its close position, so the furthest it will go. And then I'm on the back, I used a permanent marker to trace some tick marks at the slit, which will serve as a guide to where to put my adhesive. For the back circle, I'm using my bone folder just to smooth out the edges, so it will work smoothly. And we don't need the connector piece. As I mentioned in the tutorial part, we can just adhere the two circles together. So for my first card, I didn't know and used the connector piece, but we live and learn. And now I will do it without a connector piece and place adhesive at the bottom part of my circle, below the two tick marks that I made before. And adhere my acetate circle to my back circle, making sure everything is aligned and well adhered. And you can see top is open, bottom is closed. And while this is drying, I start decorating my card using my other card as a guide. And I'm starting with the area below the rainbow, making sure that everything is well hidden when it's closed. And then I'm inserting my rainbow to check. And I also need to figure where to put my adhesive to adhere the second layer. So where I can place my adhesive without interfering with the mechanism. Next, I want to adhere the little cloud at the end of my rainbow. And after I determined the right spot for it, I'm adding it right at the edge. Fiddle around with it until I like the look. And I'm putting another cloud on the other side, so it's the mirror image, so I can sandwich the edge of my give it a whirl circle, the slit between the two clouds. And after adhering my third layer to my card, I added all of my images and the frame, as well as the die-cut letters, and even more images, until my card is pretty full. Alrighty, after that's done, I'm putting some foam adhesive on the back of the card, starting with these thin foam strips that I use to go around my give it a whirl circle. And then I'm using wider foam tape of the same height for the rest of my card. But I almost forgot that I need to put an acetate window behind the top of my card for my shaker. So I put some acetate to size and looked for a circle die that will fit around my foam tape that I placed around my give it a whirl. And I'm cutting my acetate with it so it will fit around that circle. And after that window is adhered, I can continue with my foam tape. which I will do in super speed. You might notice that I use this release paper. It's left over from labels. I think it's much easier to cut thin strips to fit behind the frame using this release paper. So if you have some, I recommend to keep it for such purposes. And I'm filling almost every open spot with foam adhesive because I'm always afraid it might get crushed in the mail. But we're finally done and can adhere the card panels to the card bases. I heat embossed a part of the sentiment to the card base, so it will read, I hope your day sparkles. And then I'm adding gold stars and some gems to my shaker. And then after removing all of the release paper, I will use my scoreboard to help me close my card. So you can see I placed my front panel right into the corner and then took my card base, also placed it right in the corner and pressed it down. And I'm doing the same thing with my second card, removing the release paper, adding the shaker bits, and then pressing my card base down. And our cards are finished. I really hope you like these Give It Half a Whirl shaker cards and that you might give them a try. As always, I've listed the supplies that I used to create these cards in the description box below the video. And I want to thank you so very much for watching this tutorial. And I honestly hope you liked it and that it was helpful to you. If so, please consider leaving a like because this might help others to find this video. I hope you have a wonderful day and to see you again next time. Bye bye.